Franz Marc was a German painter and printmaker. He was born in 1880 in Munich, Germany, and he died in 1960 in France during World War I. In 1900, Marc enrolled in the Munich Academy of Art, but the curriculum was focused on natural realism. Natural realism left him dissatisfied. While enrolled in the academy, he became acquainted with Jugendstil art movement, whose popular decorative motifs emphasized the use of expressive line to depict natural forms and structures. The artist inspired Marc to break free of the strict confines of naturalism taught in the academy. Marc's earliest paintings from this period suggest a young artist experimenting with new styles that were at odds with the styles that the academy taught. The most notable features of his early paintings were their bold, expressive color. They also featured flat, two-dimensional backgrounds. In 1903, Marc spent 6 months in Paris studying modern and impressionist paintings. He met the French artist Jean Nessel, who was famous for painting animals. His animals were depicted with the same soft, expressive lines found in Japanese woodblock prints. Perhaps due to this influence, Marc started depicting animals of his own. In the years that followed, he experimented with Impressionism and Pointillism, but he found them unsatisfactory. This was partially based because of his interest in color. He desired a palette that would echo the rhythm of his expressive linear forms. Ultimately, he turned to Fauves, who appealed to him for a number of reasons. Not only did they use vibrant, distorted colors, but they also sought to record primitive life and depict relationship between man and nature. That goal would become even more important to Marc. When living in Berlin, he spent countless hours at the zoo studying and sketching the forms of the animals from every conceivable angle. He created a general concept of animal and human forms. The image of animal continued to become ever more prominent in his art, almost replacing the human form entirely. For Marc, animals were the ideal subject matter for depicting truth, purity, and beauty. He said, "On the whole, instinct has never failed to guide me, especially the instinct which led me away from man's awareness of life and towards that of the pure animal. An animal's unadulterated awareness of life made me respond with everything that is good." Marc's animals served as reflections of nature, imitating the regularity of which certain forms occur in nature. During the years 1908 and 1909, Marc began to combine his newfound interest in anatomy with intense symbolic color palette of the Fauves. Like them, Marc felt that the dream was the truest expression of reality. He believed that every fantasy was based in fact. The biggest turning point in his career and personal life came in 1910 when Marc became friends with the artist August Macke. The two developed a friendship that involved travel and study. Around this time, Marc found himself keeping company with other like-minded painters, including Wassily Kandinsky. Under the influence of Macke, Marc began experimenting with color theory of his own, one that would depict emotional intensity of his subject matter. By late 1910, he developed the color theory in which blue is the male principle, astringent and spiritual. Yellow is the female principle, gentle, happy, and sensual. Red is matter, brutal and heavy, and always the color to be opposed and overcome by the other two. In 1912, he met the French artist Robert Delaunay, whose dynamic cubist style was already well known among the Der Blue Rider artists. Marc's artworks, which up to this point were still very representational in form, started to become noticeably more cubist. Under Delaunay's influence, he began to experiment with simultaneous color contrast, which created the effect that resembled the early works of Picasso and Braque. By 1913, Marc's work became increasingly apocalyptic. Along with this shift came the change in how Marc viewed animals. He began to see animals in almost as impure as human beings. He wrote, "From one year to the next, trees, flowers, the earth, everything showed me more and more ugly and repulsive sides. And it was not until now that I became aware of the hideousness of nature and its impurities." By the following year, 1914, World War I had broken out, and Marc's work moved towards complete abstraction. Later that year, Marc enthusiastically enlisted in the German army as a cavalryman. He was killed in action in the Battle of Verdun on March 4th of 1916. Though his career was brief, his expressive linear forms and symbolic use of color had a lasting impact on the worlds of abstraction and expressionism. Franz was a founding member of German Expressionism and was instrumental in helping to define modernism in the 20th century and beyond.